Hello. I'm going to continue with Chapter 9, Nurturing the Self-Esteem of Others. But I'm going to finish reading the end of Chapter 8 because I got choked up. So I'm going to reread a little just so that I can wrap it all up. The question is, are you willing to discover what happens if, step by step, you experiment with raising the level of your authenticity? Inside, we do not respect ourselves for our lapses of authenticity. A bad taste is left in the soul. We sense that a betrayal is involved, and we are right. But if we are unwilling to confront the issue, we try for a loser's consolation. I couldn't help it. Or we say, it's easy for so-and-so to be honest and straightforward since they have such good self-esteem. I don't. We forget the fact that living authentically is one of the ways we cultivate self-esteem. To assert our own wants and needs without expecting, of course, that anyone else be responsible for their fulfillment. Even when it is difficult to do so, this is what our self-esteem asks of us. Yes. To tell the truth about what we think and feel without knowing in advance how others will respond. Yes. To allow others to see and know who we are. Yes. To remain loyal to our own consciousness, even if we are alone, to see what we see and know what we know. Yes. This is the heroism of honoring the self. It is also the path to high self-esteem. But wait. Looking back at the distance you have come since you began reading, you may be tempted to protest. I didn't think I would have to do so much. Perhaps you imagined that all you would be asked to do is utter a few pleasant affirmations every day, and your self-esteem would blossom. That is the kind of attitude that virtually guarantees inadequate self-esteem. Life, quoting Ayn Rand, is a process of self-sustaining and self-generated action, and every value pertaining to life requires continuous actions to support and maintain it. You cannot put food in your mouth or sustain a successful enterprise merely by uttering affirmations. Neither can you sustain a high level of self-esteem. Hey, it's okay. Hey, it's okay. Hey, boys, it's okay. It's okay. You're just paying nice. Hey, boys. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Okay, sorry about that. Some workers showed up and are spray painting all of a sudden in my little spot here. Okay, I'm merely uttering affirmations. Neither can you sustain a high level of self-esteem. If you bought a book entitled How to Have a Well-Conditioned Body, you would be realistic enough to know at the outset that action and discipline will be needed. Merely telling yourself every day, in every way, my body is getting in better and better condition, would not do it. You need the same realism in approaching how to raise your self-esteem. Just as you will not always be in the mood to work out physically, so you will not always be in the mood to do the exercises in this book. But if you persevere in either case, two things will become clear. The process gets easier and more appealing as you get in better shape. And when you look in the mirror, you will see and like the results. Wow, that was 5 minutes to read that. Oh, there was action. I forgot now. Okay, now I'm going to go with Chapter 9, Nurturing the Self-Esteem of Others. While each of us is ultimately responsible for his or her self-esteem, we have the option of supporting or assaulting the self-confidence and self-respect of anyone we deal with, just as others have the option in their interactions with us. Probably all of us can think of occasions when someone dealt with us in a way that acknowledged our dignity as well as his or her own. And we can recall occasions when someone dealt with us as if the concept of human dignity had no reality. We know the difference in how those two kinds of experiences feel. Turning this example around, probably all of us can think of occasions when we dealt with someone in a spirit of mutual dignity. Okay, wait a minute. I'm going to read that over again because, like I said, they're all trimming. Like, lots of stuff is all of a sudden happening. So, and here comes the barking again. Yes. Wily dog, you tell him. Don't get too close. Okay, probably all of us can think of occasions when someone dealt with us in a way that acknowledged our dignity as well as his or her own. And we can recall occasions when someone dealt with us as if the concept of human dignity had no reality. We know the difference in how those two kinds of experiences feel. Turning this example around, probably all of us can think of occasions when we dealt with someone in a spirit of mutual dignity. And we can probably recall occasions when, out of fear or hurt or anger, we dropped to a barely human level of communication. When for the moment, dignity lost all meaning for us. And we know the difference in how those two kinds of experiences feel, too. When our human interactions have dignity, we enjoy them more. And when we manifest dignity, we like ourselves more. When we behave in ways that support the self-esteem of others, we support our own. Let us consider what some of these ways are. There are certain therapists who are able to have a profound impact on the self-esteem of people who consult them. These therapists may come out of very different theoretical orientations and utilize very different techniques. And yet, in their presence, the self-esteem of the client is inspired to rise as the person discovers new possibilities of functioning that had never seemed real before. Hand's picking up. Okay, there we go. If we understand some of the most important characteristics of how these therapists relate to people, we can apply the principles to our own interactions. There is nothing esoteric about this knowledge. Ideally, it should be available to everyone. My personal dream is that one day it will be taught to school children. I and various graduate students have questioned clients of mine many times over the years in order to learn which behaviors of mine were experienced as most helpful to the strengthening of the client's self-esteem. Certain themes reoccurred again and again. None of them is unique to me. The behaviors I am about to describe will be found among any therapist who know how to facilitate the growth of self-esteem. To begin with, we treat human beings from the premise of respect. This, for me, is the first imperative of effective therapy. This is conveyed in how I greet clients when they arrive in the office, how I look at them, how I talk, and how I listen. This entails such matters as courtesy, eye contact, being non-condescending, being non-moralistic, listening attentively, being concerned with understanding and with being understood, being appropriately spontaneous, refusing to be cast in the role of omniscient authority, refusing to believe the client is incapable of growth. The respect is unrelenting, regardless of the client's behavior. The message is conveyed: a human being is an entity deserving of respect. A client for whom being treated in this manner may be a rare or even unique experience may be stimulated over time to begin to restructure his or her self-concept. I recall a man once saying to me, "Looking back over our therapy, I feel that nothing else has happened. I feel that nothing else that happened was quite so impactful as the simple fact that I always felt respected by you. Pulled everything I could to make you despise me and throw me out. I kept trying to make you act like my father. You refused to cooperate. Somehow, I had to deal with that. I had to let that in, which was difficult at first, but as I did, the therapy began to take hold. I remember that at one of our first sessions, he had remarked, 'My father would talk to any busboy with more courtesy than he ever showed to me.' When a client is describing feelings of fear or pain or anger, it is not helpful to respond with, 'Oh, you shouldn't feel that.' A therapist is not a cheerleader. There is great value for a therapy client or for anyone else in expressing feelings without having to deal with criticism, condemnation, sarcasm, or lectures. The process of expression is often intrinsically healing. A therapist who is uncomfortable with a client's expression of strong feelings needs to work on him or herself. To be able to listen serenely and with empathy is basic to the healing arts. It is also basic to authentic friendship, to say nothing of love. Contrast this with friends who interrupt you with sermons or advice or change of subject when you attempt to communicate powerful emotions, as if your friends have no confidence in you or in themselves. As a therapist, I regard one of my first tasks to be that of creating a context in which the person As a therapist, I regard one of my first tasks to be that of creating a context in which the persons who come to me can express their thoughts and opinions without fear of ridicule or reproach. But clearly such a policy should not be confined to therapy. If you agree that you have nothing to gain by making people afraid to speak in your presence, then ask yourself whether you create a context of openness for people when they interact with you. One of the experiences that people hope for in therapy and out of therapy is that of being visible, seen, and understood. Possibly, they have felt alienated and invisible since childhood, and they long for a different sense of themselves. Respecting this desire and understanding its legitimacy, I seek to respond appropriately by sharing observations about the client and providing feedback that allows the client to feel seen and heard. I think I hear you saying, ... I imagine you might be feeling, ... Right now you look as if, ... Let me tell you how I understand your viewpoint, ... But surely this is human communication, not merely therapeutic communication. We all long for the experience of visibility and understanding. Should we not seek to give it to one another, to make it a natural part of human encounters? Effective therapists judge, but are not judgmental. They judge in that they obviously assess some behaviors as superior to others from the point of view of the long-term happiness and well-being of the client. They are not so hypocritical as to pretend that they are without standards or without likes and dislikes. But they do not moralize, and they do not seek to change behavior by evoking guilt. Thus, they do not say, "Only a sick person would do that," or "Do you know how immoral you are?" or "Until you acknowledge your depravity, I can't help you," or "Not very bright, are you?" When we bombard people with our evaluations of their character, intelligence, and the like, we may intimidate, but we do not inspire growth, confidence, or self-respect. And the alternative to being moralistic and judgmental is not a policy of bombarding with compliments and extravagant praise. This often intensifies feelings of unworthiness or invisibility in the recipient, since he or she knows that the speaker is not accurate. We can learn to say what we like or dislike, admire or do not admire, without labeling, assaulting, or praising unrealistically. I really enjoy when you ... I am not comfortable when you ... I felt hurt when you ... I felt inspired by your ... In my experience, helpful therapists are compassionate, but they are not sentimental, and they do not encourage passivity or self-pity. Any number of my clients have commented on the importance of this distinction for their progress in therapy. I ask, what do you see as your alternatives? What do you think you might do to improve your situation? What action are you willing to take? I do not interrupt with such questions if a person is just beginning to express suffering, but a time usually comes when these questions need to be asked. I believe that part of my job consists of awakening the client to an action orientation. In dealing with family, friends, and associates, there will inevitably be times when we can help them, if we choose to, by conveying just this perspective. Effective therapists are kind, but they do not let their clients walk all over them. They do not, for example, self-sacrificially allow clients to call on them at any hour of the day or night over trivial matters. They do not allow themselves to be financially exploited. They require that the value of their time be recognized. They do not leave a client's insulting manners or hostility unconfronted, unless as a specific, time-limited strategy for therapeutic purposes. They draw lines. They set limits. So do good parents. So do intelligent friends. So do self-respecting persons in all settings. in taking proper care of themselves, of their own needs and time. Therapists set an example. They signal, this is how I treat myself, and this is how you should treat yourself. Thus, there is no clash between rational selfishness, honorable respect for one's own interests, on one hand, and professional responsibility on the other. This has relevance to all of us. Just as self-sacrificing parents do not set a good example, I gave up my life for you, but merely teach their children that it is proper to regard themselves as objects of sacrifice, which tends to generate resentment, hatred, and guilt in the children. So, self-sacrificing friends, my needs don't matter, are a burden, not a joy or an inspiration or an example of anything positive we want to learn. I am keenly aware that behavior, including the most undesirable behavior, at some level has functional utility within the knowledge and context of the individual involved. Therefore, I wish to understand the model of self in the world from which the client is operating, as contrasted with merely dismissing the behavior as crazy. For example, a wife's angry shrieking, which may be very unpleasant to witness, makes its own kind of unhappy sense if we know that nothing less has ever caught her husband's attention, and that she has no sense of an alternative that would work better. To repeat a point made earlier in the book, we do not understand a person if we merely label him or her as rotten, thoughtless, or immoral, and the like. To understand, we need to know the context in which the person's behavior makes some kind of sense, or feels desirable, or even necessary. Even if objectively it is totally irrational. I'm going to do that again because someone drove by. To repeat a point made earlier in the book, we do not understand a person if we merely label him or her as rotten, thoughtless, and immoral, and the like. To understand, we need to know the context in which the person's behavior makes some kind of sense, or feels desirable, or even necessary, even if objectively it is totally irrational. There's only 3 more pages. I know this is long, but on the level of our personal relationships, this means helping a person who is behaving inappropriately to identify where he or she is coming from, to grasp what needs are trying to be satisfied. In other words, to bring to that person the understanding and compassion I suggested in an earlier chapter we should bring to ourselves. What were you feeling at the time? What options did you see yourself as having? What did you think the person was saying to whom you were reacting so strongly? How did you see the situation? Obviously, we cannot practice this policy equally with every person we encounter. But with people we love or really care about, or perhaps people we work with, it is a powerful tool. Remember that paralyzing guilt does not serve anyone's interests. And in saying this, there is no implication of glossing over wrongdoing or of sponsoring amoralism. There are obviously times when we need to say, your behavior is completely unacceptable to me, or even, I don't wish to associate with you. But if our goal is to induce a behavioral change and an increase in self-esteem to support the change, then in many instances the strategy suggested above has much to recommend it. One of the characteristics of effective therapists, like the best teachers and coaches, is that they know their clients have greater potential than the clients themselves may realize. You don't believe you can master algebra. I believe you can. You don't think you can jump higher? Try again. You say you don't dare act against your parents' beliefs? I believe you are capable of thinking for yourself and running your own life. In other words, they do not buy into the person's negative self-concept. This is a point of highest importance. A client once remarked to a young psychologist who was studying with me, "If you're asking me what factors I think were most responsible for the success of therapy, I would rank first Nathaniel's conviction that I could do all kinds of things I felt I could not do. I didn't think I could ever earn my living at something I really enjoyed. Now I'm doing it. I never could picture myself happily in love. Now I am." I would tell Nathaniel I was hopeless, and he would say something like, "I hear you. Shall we continue?" If we wish to nurture the self-esteem of another person, we need to relate to that person from our own vision of his or her worth and value, providing an experience of acceptance and respect. We need to remember that almost all of us tends to underestimate our inner resources, and to keep that thought central in our awareness. We are capable of more than we believe. If we remain clear about this, others can acquire this knowledge from us almost by contagion. We can learn, for example, to listen to a person's expression of feelings, even when those feelings are self-doubt and insecurity. And we can listen without indulging any impulse to lecture or debate, because we understand that fully owning and experiencing unwanted feelings is the first step toward transcending them. Of course, we must recognize that sometimes a person may use self-disparaging remarks to manipulate us into disagreeing and paying compliments. We can refuse to participate in that game by saying, "I wonder what the payoff is for putting yourself down right now." Whoa, wait a minute, I'm going to read that up. Of course, we must recognize that sometimes a person may use remarks to manipulate us into disagreeing and paying them compliments. We can refuse to participate in that game by saying, "I wonder what the payoff is for putting yourself down right now." I'm going to have to write that down. That's a great sentence. I don't necessarily bite the bait like I used to when I was younger, when people do that, but I like giving compliments. It makes me happy. So if you're, I might then find myself as a little bit of a target for those kinds of people, is what I'm saying. Because, balance and such. Okay, here we go. I'm almost done. I know this is long, but we've got this half a page and then one full page and another half. It can be very difficult to go on believing in another person when that person seems not to believe in him or herself. And yet one of the greatest gifts we can offer is our refusal to accept a person's poor self-concept at face value, seeing through it to the deeper, stronger self that exists within, if only as a potential. We cannot always succeed. We can only try. Optimally, we will bring out the best within the other person. At a minimum, we will strengthen the best in ourselves. Finally, to whatever extent we are rational, congruent, and consistent in our dealings with people, we present them with an intelligible and comprehensible impression of reality. And any competent therapist and any self-respecting human being strives to offer this sanity in his or her interactions. Thus, we signal, your mind is competent to deal with me. I am not presenting a bewildering and contradictory impression of reality, such as would leave you feeling confused, impotent, and powerless. And when we are rational, congruent, and consistent, of course, our own self-esteem benefits. These observations are relevant equally to our dealings with adults and with children. Since I explore the subject of child-parent relationships in the book Honoring the Self, I shall not cover that ground again here. What I am sketching now are general guidelines applicable to all our relationships. But if you have children, go over the preceding descriptions of behaviors and consider how consistently you practice them, because children need these behaviors from you even more than adults do. Okay, I'm going to put this up here so that we can get a screenshot of it. There we go. In case anybody wants a picture. Okay. If I had had the experience of being respected as a child, if someone had believed in me when I was young, if someone had conveyed that my wants and feelings mattered, if someone had seen me as a unique individual, I have heard countless clients in therapy say to me in sentence completion exercises, I would have learned self-respect. I might believe in myself. I would take my own wants seriously and work to fulfill them. I would have a clearer sense of who I am. The more we work on ourselves, the more we seem to acquire greater appropriateness in our interactions. No parent of healthy self-esteem is likely to think that ridiculing a child will inspire competence and independence. No teacher of good self-esteem will need to be told that sarcasm is not a good teaching tool. No self-respecting executive is likely to think he will elicit the best from people by treating them with contempt. No self-confident human being tries to keep friends by posing as an authority and manipulating them through their insecurities. In the area of child-parent relationships, it is clear that, while nothing is guaranteed, the best way to inspire good self-esteem in children is to possess it in ourselves, just as the best way to inspire sane sexual attitudes is to have them ourselves. The principle is wider. If we wish to make a positive contribution to the self-concept of others, any others, not just children, then self-esteem, like charity, begins at home, within ourselves. Serenity inspires serenity. Happiness inspires happiness. Openness inspires openness. And when we live from the best within ourselves, we are most likely to draw out the best in others. If we have the courage to let others see our excitement, we imply that excitement is a value that they should not suppress their own. If we let others see our passion for our goals, we implicitly bestow our sanction on their own capacity for passionate goal setting. If we proudly honor our own values and interests, we signal others that they have a right to honor theirs. If we have the integrity to be who we are, we may inspire that integrity in others. And so, in honoring the self, we help build a community of persons with healthy self-esteem. Individualism is not the adversary of community, but its most vital pillar. If these ideas seem valid to you, what do they mean in terms of your interactions with people during the next month of your life and the month after that? All right, that was the end of chapter 9. We've made it. Chapter 10 starts on page 145. I've been reading to you How to Raise Your Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden. Trying to find the name of this chapter. There it is. Nurturing the Self-Esteem of Others, chapter 9. So, thank you for being with me. I appreciate you. I have really, really enjoyed this book. Even though it's all this dirt and I've had it forever, but I am thankful for getting to experience this together. I appreciate you.